the question that's on everybody's minds right now: when can the world expect to see relief from the COVID pandemic? I answer that today. Stay tuned. Hello everybody, I'm Tina Chaudhary. Welcome to my channel and a very warm namaste. The best way to predict the future or the outcome of any event is to look at historical data. So in this case, if we want to predict the outcome or the end of this current pandemic, we would have to look at the historical data of past pandemics, which means that we would have to study the planetary transits and the planetary placements of past pandemics and see what are the common factors that existed during those pandemics. Do they match the current pandemics? And what were the factors and the planetary situations that gave relief during those pandemics? So basically we're saying that predictive analytics utilizes historical data to predict results. In this case, there was a study done by a South Indian data analyst who's also an astrologer, and she ran data analytics of past pandemics and to find these commonalities of past pandemics. So she looked at two pandemics in the past. So the first one she looked at was the Spanish flu that all of us have been talking about, the Spanish flu that happened in 1918. And then the Chinese or the Asian influenza that started in 1957. So she ran a lot of data, even on other pandemics, but those are the only two I'm going to do because I just want to keep the video short. So she did the data on several pandemics, but those are the two I'm going to share with you. So she ran this data to see what were the commonalities, astrological commonalities, between all these pandemics and epidemics that the world has seen in the last century or so. And she did find something very interesting. So she's published this in an astrological magazine, and I've subscribed to that. So she put this data out, and she kind of shared this data with people that subscribe to the magazine, but it's for us astrologers to kind of figure out how to read this data. So I'm subscribed to that. I have this data, I've read it, and now I've analyzed it, and now I'm going to present it to you and do an analysis on when we think COVID could give us relief and possible permanent ending to this pandemic. So in her data, she found that there was two major planets that were always in the same relationship and situation that may have caused the pandemic, and it was common in all of the pandemics. Obviously she was running data analytics. So those two planets, you're surprised to know, so the two planets were Jupiter, and the second one was Pluto. Now it's surprising that you would think it was Jupiter, because Jupiter is considered Jivakaraka in Vedic astrology, or all astrology. Jupiter is considered a benefic planet, and it's, like I said, is Jivakaraka. Jiv means life force, and Karaka means significator. So Jupiter means life force to us, right? And it's such a benefic, beautiful planet that it gives us all the good things. And Pluto, of course, is the ninth planet. It's the last planet of our solar system. It's very slow moving. It takes 248 years to go around the sun. So in any one of our lifetimes, it's always going to be in the same house. So it doesn't really impact an individual's life events. So Vedic astrology kind of doesn't take it into account when making predictions for each person. So but in Hindi, Pluto is called Yama, or Yama. So it's a Yam god. So we all now would understand that the Hindus, if you know Hindi, Yam means death. So it's the Pluto, the planet, signifies death. It means rebirth, transformation. The lord of Yama is Lord Shiva. And so anybody that would know that in the Hindu religion, Lord Shiva signifies not death in a bad way, but death and rebirth and transformation. So Pluto signifies all the not so nice things for all the people that believe in astrology. It means destruction. It also, like I said, it means death, but it also means rebirth and transformation. So if you want to take the positive significations of Pluto, you would consider it to be transformatory in nature. You would consider it to be the signification of rebirth, or cleansing and then rebirth. So we've seen that kind of a little bit at COVID, right? It's cleansed all of us in the sense that we've taken a rebirth. All of us have kind of adjusted to a new lifestyle. We've taken a very different approach to how we deal with life, and that's what actually Pluto signifies. So I'm not surprised that it was Pluto that was a little bit of the culprit. Who would have known, right? So anyway, so she found that these are two planets, Jupiter and Pluto, that are always in the same situation, so to speak, when a pandemic is caused. What is that situation? The situation is that Jupiter has to be debilitated, not able to give it, not energized enough to give its good benefits. So it could be, it has to be retrograde, and it has to be debilitated where it's not powerful enough to give its good effect, and it has to be very close to Pluto, which means that it has to be in a planetary war with Pluto, and Pluto has to win the war. So Pluto has to be retrograde as well. So the conditions are, let me repeat, the conditions are a retrograde Jupiter, retrograde Pluto, very close to each other, and a debilitated Jupiter as well. So those are the conditions that were common in all of these pandemics and epidemics. It's not surprising when you now think about it, where the planet that signifies death and destruction is in a war with the planet that signifies life, and then the planet that signifies life loses the war, but the significator of death, rebirth, transformation, destruction wins that planetary war, and hence unleashes what's called like an epidemic or a pandemic onto the world. So these are the conditions that were found to be common amongst all the pandemics and epidemics that she found. So it's a great study. It's very valuable for all of us astrologers to know that. So I'm going to take a look at two of those pandemics that she put out, the details of two of the pandemics, like I said, that she put out. So one's going to be the Spanish flu of 1918, and then the other one's going to be the Asian influenza that started in 1957. So I'll give you just a touch of the details, not too much, because I know you just want me to cut to the chase and just tell me when the pandemic is ending. But I really want to tell you why I think that and why I'm making these predictions. So I'm going to touch just a little bit on, like I said, Spanish flu, and then the Asian influenza, and then we'll cut to the chase and talk about the COVID pandemic that everybody wants to know. Let's take a look at the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu started in February 1918. At that time, Pluto was retrograde in the house of Gemini, and Jupiter was, guess where it was? In Gemini, and it was retrograde at that time. That's when the Spanish flu started. When was relief seen? In August 1919. Jupiter moved into this house of Cancer, which is the next sign. Cancer is the state of exaltation for Jupiter, and then that's when relief started to be seen for the world from the Spanish flu. As it moved forward in Cancer, relief continued to be seen from the Spanish flu, but in April 1920, when Jupiter moved into the next sign, there was total relief seen. But the relief was started to be seen as soon as Jupiter moved into Cancer, which is the house of exaltation for Jupiter. Now let's take a look at the Asian influenza, or it was also called the H2N2 influenza later on. That started in China in February of 1957. At that time, Jupiter was in Virgo and Pluto was in Leo. Even though they were not in the same sign, they were less than 30 degrees apart, and they were both in retrograde motion. When was relief seen? You guessed it. When Jupiter moved on to the next sign in June 1958, it moved on to Libra, and it started its direct motion. Relief was seen. There was vaccine started, and relief was seen. Now we take a look at the question that everybody is really watching the video for. The COVID pandemic that we're all under the influence of, and it's been going on for a very long time. Now, why is it going on for a long time? In December 2019, when the pandemic started, Jupiter was in Sagittarius, but it was fast approaching Capricorn. It was towards the end of Sagittarius, and Pluto was in Capricorn. Even though they were not in the same house, they were very close, coming together very close, and they were less than 30 degrees apart. As they started to come very close, the pandemic started. In March 2020, Jupiter entered Capricorn and came into a very close conjunction with Pluto in Capricorn. And that's when the lockdown started. Do you remember what happened next? We went into lockdown in March, and then in September, there was the announcement of vaccines or vaccine trials, or the approval of a drug, remdesivir or whatever. I'm sure I'm not saying it right. That was in September. Do you know what happened in September? Jupiter went into direct motion. Even though it was still in Capricorn, Jupiter was no longer retrograde and it started its direct motion. So we got a little bit of hope that there was going to be a vaccine and there was a drug approved for it. What's the next thing that happened? In April 2021, Pluto became retrograde again. And in June, right after that, Jupiter became retrograde again, even though it was in Aquarius, but it started moving towards Capricorn, towards Pluto. That's when we saw the second wave, because both Pluto and both Jupiter were retrograde, and Jupiter was approaching Pluto and getting very close to it. That's when the second wave started, and that's where we are today. Jupiter is retrograde, Pluto is retrograde, and Jupiter is moving towards Pluto and going towards a tight conjunction again. Now this will last for some time. On September 14th, 2021, Jupiter will re-enter Capricorn. There's going to be a little bit of maybe a spike in September. Between September and October, I think there will be a little bit of spike because Jupiter will re-enter Capricorn in a retrograde motion and come into a tight conjunction with Pluto. So a little bit of a spike in September. But in October 2021, Jupiter will start its direct motion and start moving away from Pluto. I don't think that it's immediately we're going to see the effect in October, but we may start to see a little bit of relief because as soon as Jupiter starts moving direct, it starts to get a little better. But it's still going to be in Capricorn with Pluto. So I don't think we're going to see much relief in October. In November of 2021, Jupiter will move into the house of Aquarius and move out of Capricorn. And that's when we start to see some relief. So September and October, I think, are not going to be good months because Jupiter is going to be in Capricorn and it's going to be in a retrograde motion, and it's going to be next to Pluto. So November 2021, when Jupiter moves into Aquarius, we're all going to feel a little bit of relief. Complete relief. Now, complete relief is going to start from November 2021 moving forward. But absolute and back to normalcy complete will not be in November 2021. It will be in April 2022. And why is that? Because I think that when Jupiter moves into the next sign after Aquarius, which is the house of Pisces, in April 2022, Pisces is owned by Jupiter. Jupiter will be very powerful in its own sign of Pisces. It will be 2 houses away from Pluto, and it won't be in that planetary war situation anymore, is when things will be back to normal. So complete normalcy, April 2022. Starting relief from the second wave will be starting in November 2021 when Jupiter enters Aquarius again in its direct motion. That's my prediction. I hope you liked my analysis. If you do like it, give me a like and make sure you share it with friends and family. We're not out of the woods yet. COVID is still going strong. Make sure you stay safe and make sure your family stays safe. If you haven't been vaxxed, make sure you do get the vaccine. It is a good protection against this deadly disease. So hopefully you like my video. Give me a like, give me a comment, and share it with friends and family. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you do subscribe.